All right, thank you everybody for being here. It's wonderful to be at ProfCon with friends new and old. Some of you know Stu and I go way back, but I go way back even further with Scott Cowley and B.J. Allen, other authors here. I actually wasn't the nexus that brought them in to be authors here. It's just coincidental. My second semester of teaching, Scott Cowley was in my marketing research class, and then the very next semester, B.J. Allen was in that class. So Scott, he set up a pattern of giving me feedback back then. So Scott was the editor of my textbook and provided some really invaluable feedback. So some of the quality of that first chapter, he gave us some really straightforward feedback that we needed to rewrite the whole thing, and we did, and it was really valuable because we don't want the first chapter to be kind of a garbage chapter. Actually in that first semester teaching, Scott came into my office, and I will admit it was my first semester teaching, and I'm not like 𝐤𝐞𝐚𝐫𝐬, who probably was like a rock star teacher from the very outset. There was a bit of a learning curve for me, and Scott let me know that there were some problems in my course, including, and so he gave me some feedback, and I took it. It was very valuable feedback, but it included kind of the sickest burn I've ever received as a professor, and that was this. He goes, we were just talking in my group the other day. It's really ironic you're teaching my marketing research class and that you've never researched to know how much we dislike your class. And it was one of those where I was like, are you sure you wanted to say that out loud? But our relationship could only go up from there, and it has, So when I created the title for this presentation, originally my instinct was to call it A Guide for the Lazy, but I thought that would have been lost in translation. Number one, lazy is a term of endearment. I consider myself an incredibly lazy person. I work hard because I need to, but in my future life, I think I want to just inherit money. But also, the other reason is it's not lazy to try to be efficient with keeping up to date, right? So one tack I could have taken with this presentation was, here's all the people you should follow, here's all the places you should go to keep up to date, but that's just going to add to your to-do list. So my orientation to this presentation is, how can we spend as little time as possible keeping up to date so that we can free up time for other pursuits, optimizing your courses, meeting with students, whatever. We all have lots of responsibilities, right? And so it actually made me think of the Chatbooks commercial. I don't know how many of you saw that Chatbooks commercial from a few years ago. It was semi-viral, but it was basically, it shows this mom talking about all of the responsibilities she has as a mom and having no time for anything. She's trying to keep her kids alive while it's pretty funny. Her kids are jumping out the window, jumping off the roof, shooting crossbows in the house, that kind of thing, right? And this is in this particular scene towards the end of the commercial, she says, well, maybe some of you are thinking, but I love formatting my photo books and putting the captions on, and it says, well, then this product isn't for you, freak moms. And so my kind of response to that is, well, maybe some of you are saying, I really like to follow 350 SEO bloggers and 25 social media personalities to keep up to date. And then, well, I'm going to say, well, this presentation isn't for you, freak profs, okay? But for the rest of us who have lots of responsibilities, I'm going to try to give you a framework for keeping up to date as efficiently as possible. Okay, so when we first started 𝐤𝐞𝐚𝐫𝐬, so I say that, I didn't start 𝐤𝐤𝐶𝐚. Stu started 𝐤𝐤𝐶𝐚, but I was on board really early on, right? And our first conference was the Winter AMA conference in Orlando in January of 2014. And I tried to get a picture, thanks to Stu and Trevor, we tried to look for pictures of us at that conference, but we didn't have one. So here's from, when I think Stu and I were teenagers at this point, filming a promotional video for the textbook. But we presented at that AMA conference, and we talked about, hey, we're going to have a simulation, we're going to have this textbook, it's going to be very hands-on, we're going to try to give students hands-on skills that they can use to do digital marketing more effectively. And the question we got from a lot of professors was, well, how are you going to give them the theory? Right? How are you going to make sure they understand the theory? And frankly, I didn't have a great answer for that because I've always been more of the mindset that skill is much more important than theory. Right? And the question, so I didn't really answer that question very well because I've always been a bit of a theory skeptic. I just don't buy in as thoroughly as most people. In any grad program you're going to go into, they're going to talk about the importance of theory and theory building. And I'm a data guy. Show me the data. I want to know what the data is before I actually buy into theory. My thinking has evolved somewhat. So here's what I'm going to present and propose is that in the digital marketing realm, the theory is a little bit more grounded. When we talk about marketing theory, we're going to talk about pretty heady, kind of in the clouds ideas about, brand affinity, customer satisfaction, and we can talk about these things very divorced from the practical application. But in digital marketing, when we're talking about digital marketing theory, that's always very well grounded, and it contextualizes the actual practical application. And so the framework I'm going to give to you today is that if we understand the digital marketing theory underlying these principles, that will help us contextualize any updates, and to the extent that we need to incorporate these updates into our instruction. And so what I'm going to do is provide several examples. We're going to talk about a topic, we're going to review the theory surrounding that topic, and then we're going to contextualize here what are some of the recent updates and what do we need to update in our curriculum with the new things that are coming out. Okay, so that's the framework I'm going to be presenting. So the topic list is just basically the contents of Digital Marketing Essentials. So here's the 13 chapters of Digital Marketing Essentials. I'm not going to go in order chapter by chapter. I'm going to go kind of through the big ones. Some of the big updates that we all know that's happening. In search engine optimization, what's the big update? What's the big development that we need to potentially incorporate into our instruction? We got ChatGPT, right? So for those of you who have been living under a rock, ChatGPT is a generative AI that allows you to have conversations. And frankly, it's not that new in terms of what it does. You can put in a search and it responds and it will chat with you, which that's been around for a couple decades. It's just a gigantic leap forward in terms of the quality of the responses, right? And so in 2 weeks, I've got another conference in Barcelona, and so I was like, I only have one extra day flying all the way over there, and I only have 1 day. And so I asked ChatGPT, hey, what's a one-day Barcelona itinerary, right? And it gives me lots of things, and then I can follow up, right? And so ChatGPT, when you hear people talk about it, this could potentially revolutionize and completely upend the entire search process, right? So people go in there, instead of actually being routed to websites, they're just going to go and talk to ChatGPT, which, that could completely, do away with any kind of SEO. All right, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's review the theory of SEO and search engines in general. So search engines, let's go back to the basics. What is a search engine? A search engine is a place where hordes of people, that's the picture that came up when I searched for hordes. So we've got like hordes of people going to this one website and doing a search on just giving a couple word clue to Google about what I want to see, and then Google has to take with all this variety of people and all the variety of their searches with this tiny little clue, has to figure out which of the billions of websites and web pages out there will best match your query, right? It is like the logistical issues with that is it's amazing. I love search engines. I like the science behind search engine, I think is just like the most exciting thing I can think about. But when it comes down to it, we boil it down to two things, and that is relevance and quality, right? Relevance, if you do a search for baked ziti, which I've never even eaten, I don't even know what that is, but if you give somebody, that search and they return a baked chicken recipe, no matter how good that baked chicken recipe is, Google has failed, right? So relevance is obviously number one, but then if you know anything about the history of search engines, just having a relevancy does not give you good results, right? You need to have high quality results because there is so much garbage in here, right? The internet is just full of garbage. And so we put those two things together, and that is how Google gives you good search results. All right, so, and this is going to be a good illustration of how the theory in digital marketing is very well grounded. We tie those things to actual practice. When we're doing relevance, our job as SEO, in SEO, is to make sure our website, that Google knows our website is both highly relevant and high quality for these particular searches. So when we're trying to make sure Google knows what we're relevant to, we have to make sure we are looking at what are the searches we want to be relevant to, right? Anybody can search, anybody can use a variety of search terms to find what we're looking for. What are the relevant terms that we want to rank for? The ones that are high volume, the ones that indicate highest relevance to what we actually offer, the ones that have low enough competition we can actually rank on that front page. And so then we're going to do keyword research to select our keywords, to figure out the keywords that we want to make sure our website scores high on relevance. Then we're going to map those across pages to make sure we're not cannibalizing. Make sure Google knows which of the pages they should show when they do a particular search. And then once we have that mapped out, it's simply a matter of making sure our keywords are in the right places, right? The title tag, the header, etc. Right? So that's on the relevance side. On the quality side, it's all about link building is like number one. We need to make sure some people are linking to us so Google gets those external validation that you are a high quality site. But also, if you follow the history of search engines, one of the major trends over the last 15 years is they are more and more, Google is able to just look directly at your site and measure the quality of your site just from the on-site signals. And so that is the underlying theory, but you can kind of see how well grounded that is in our practice, right? Okay, so now let's take this theory and apply it to ChatGPT. How does ChatGPT change how we do SEO instruction? Right, so we've got, here's the way the search engine works, and now we've got hordes of people coming, doing searches, we have to find the right website, but now a lot of them are going to also instead engage in ChatGPT, or on Google, what is it? Google Bard, right? And so instead of getting, made up results, so by the way, if you don't know, Google Bard, like they introduced pretty soon after they did a big demo, and it was kind of embarrassing. Why? Because Google Bard gave false information, right? Does ChatGPT ever give false information? Almost constantly. That's like all that ChatGPT can do, because it invents stuff. It invents text and it invents information. And Google is dealing with a bigger constraint in terms of we need to make sure the information is accurate, right? Okay, so we've got a segment of people are no longer going to be routed to websites. A segment of people are now going to be going through ChatGPT. Or going through Google Bard if they're on Google, right? And so how does that change SEO instruction? Well, it doesn't change this, right? We still have a population of people who are coming to our website, and the rules of SEO are going to remain the same. We're going to have some people who we can't get to because Google or Bing is going to siphon off some of this traffic into the chat space, right? But it's not clear that that's going to reduce our traffic because it might actually expand the use case of search engines. Now, just more people are going to be using search because they have this other capability. So there's a substitution effect as well as the expansionary effect. And so this is like getting down to like economic theory. We don't know what that's going to do to the overall volume of search. But it's not that different from, what is this? This is a picture of Abraham Lincoln, but what is this? This is knowledge graph. So knowledge graph, when you do a search for lots of things, many years ago, Google established knowledge graph, which was, hey, you know what, instead of sending you to a website to find your answer, there are some queries we're just going to give you the answer directly on the search engine, right? And what did that do? It siphoned off some traffic that would have come to the website, and instead, people get the answer directly on Google. So Google Bard and ChatGPT is going to do some of the same thing. That doesn't change the rules of SEO. Okay, one thing you'll notice, though, maybe I'll just go back. In this actual ChatGPT example I gave you, it actually does give you some links to websites, right? So we don't know the extent to which people are going to engage in chat and then end up being routed to a website, and how maybe the routing and the ranking of websites within ChatGPT might be different. Maybe the relevance will be more granular, which could be cool, but still all of the things we've learned about SEO means, okay, we probably want to bring it up with our students. We want to talk to them about it, but we're not going to change what we teach in SEO. Okay, so that's great. We've saved some time. You probably want to keep up to date with ChatGPT just because it's really cool and your students want to learn about it, but it's not going to change what we do and how we instruct on SEO. So that's great. Our theory has let us know that, hey, we can keep going forward with our SEO instruction. Okay, next topic I wanted to cover was, analytics. What's going on with web analytics? Yeah, we got Google Analytics 4, right, which is actually not new. It's been around for a few years, but what's the big deal? Universal Analytics next month is gone, right? So you are absolutely forced. You must get on Google Analytics 4 if you want to do any analytics anymore. Okay. So let's review the theory of, the underlying theory of analytics. Okay, so we actually have to go kind of back to chapter 1. So the theory of analytics is, or basically analytics is, hey, it's data. lets us know what's going on so we can make better decisions, right? Well, let's break it down. Go back to the theory in chapter 1 was, what does a website or a digital property have to do? We need to attract traffic. We need to convert that traffic. And then we want to maximize our revenue per conversion to make our site or digital property as profitable as possible. Right? Analytics is supposed to help us with that, right? So when we're analyzing our traffic, we want to see how many sessions are we getting? How often are people coming to our digital property? We're going to break that down by channel, right, to see which channels are bringing us the most traffic. We can also look at our ad campaigns, which ad campaigns are giving us the most traffic. Then we're also going to be looking at conversion, right? So the number one metric for a long time has always been, what's the conversion rate? The percentage of people or visitors who come to our digital property, what percentage of them are actually going to convert and become paying customers? So I'll tell you right now, I'm going to talk about it like it's an e-commerce site, even though we know there's lots of other kinds of conversions, lots of other kinds of sites. It's easiest to talk about conversion when we assume it's a purchase of some kind, right? So what percentage of sessions result in a purchase, right? And we're going to break that down by channel as well, right? And by ad campaign to see which ad campaign is giving us the best conversion here. We've put traffic and conversion together. I also mentioned bounce rate. Why is bounce rate important? Well, if we have a campaign or some traffic channel that's giving us a really high bounce rate, that's a really strong indication that we've got a mismatch here, right? We're getting the wrong kind of traffic, or the traffic that comes, they see our content on the landing page, and they're not happy with what they see, so they're bouncing, right? So it's a really strong indication of, where we've got a mismatch here. And then when we're looking at revenue per conversion, we usually look at average order value, right? So can we get the average order value up? If the typical person is spending $60, can we get that up to $65 with recommended add-on purchases, with maybe recommending higher premium products? That's going to improve our profitability, right? So analytics, we're going to be looking at all this data to see how can we influence all of this here. There's a couple additional points of theory that are also relevant here. One is attribution, right? So we've talked about this a lot. It's a difficult concept to really instruct students that, hey, analytics told you had 300 conversions came from search. The number isn't 300. We don't know what the real number is. That's just the number attributed to search, right? So it could have been caused by another channel. I think that's a kind of a difficult concept to instruct students on, to really let them grasp at a deep level that the attributed numbers aren't necessarily the full number, the real numbers, right? So that's another aspect of theory that students need to understand, as well as the concept of spillovers. So there's a few different kinds of spillovers. One is like direct to, sorry, it's a direct. No, it's a brand to direct or brand to generic, generic to brand. So there's spillover. So I'll give you just a couple examples. Somebody does a search for hotels in California. So that's a generic to brand or generic to direct. Let's say they do a search for hotels in California. They do a generic search. And then let's say your conversion rate is really low. But then maybe a week later, instead of searching for hotels in California when they're ready to book, they just go directly to Hilton, California. So that's a generic to brand spillover, right? So even so, your measurement might be understating the actual conversion that's happening because there's this spillover effect. There's also generic to direct, which might be they search for mid-size sedan, and they end up on Nissan's website, and then the next time they want to look for a car, instead of searching for a mid-size sedan, they just go directly to NissanUSA.com. Right? So there's these spillover effects, which means that's another thing we have to keep in mind when we're analyzing these numbers. Okay? So this is all theory that is relevant to how are we going to analyze this new the development with Google Analytics 4 and our transition from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4. Okay, so what kind of decisions do we make based on analytics, right? Just understanding the numbers doesn't help us unless we can make better decisions that lead to higher profitability. Okay, so we got budget allocation across channels. This is actually now goes back down to chapter 13 of the textbook where we talk about digital strategy. And digital strategy is primarily focused on budget allocation. When we are trying to execute everything, we've learned how to execute on all these different channels. How do we figure out which channel is going to be most profitable? We look at the analytics and figure out what's the profitability, and we're going to allocate more budget to where we're going to get a bigger bang for our buck, right? Our ad targeting, if we figure out, okay, so certain traffic is just not converting at as high a rate and has a high bounce rate, then there's something wrong with that traffic and we're going to target our ads differently. And then our ad copy. If we have a high bounce rate, we know our ad copy is not matching up with a landing page. How do we optimize our ad copy? All of those decisions are going to be aided by analytics. As well as this analytics gives us all sorts of insights into potential technical problems. If we find that one of the browsers, the conversion rate goes down on one of the browsers, that could be an indication that one of the updates to the browsers is actually causing problems on our website. We need to fix that, right? So a lot of those clues come from analytics. Optimizing the conversion funnel. We just had a presentation yesterday talking about the conversion funnel. We're just going like, it's been like 20 years. How do we not have an optimized conversion funnel? Well, if you have a problem with your conversion funnel, you can look at that through analytics. Landing page mismatches, I think I'll just skip through some of those. But all of these things are things that we can improve with good use of analytics. All right, now along comes Google Analytics 4. Okay, so if we look at this home screen on analytics, which of the metrics you see up here are going to be really useful for those things we just talked about, the decisions to optimize, some of the key metrics that are going to help us improve our website? My answer, none of them. Okay, so like I'm giving this away, but I think Google Analytics 4 is not so much a bad update, it's horrifically bad. Like, I think Google Analytics 4 takes people far away from the actual decisions that help. You can't find conversion rate on here anymore. You have to like set it up yourself, which is like the key metric that we always want to look at, right? They hide it from you, right? They're focused on more vanity metrics now, like this stuff. Ooh, we had 116 users in the last 30 minutes. How is that useful? It can never be useful. How would it be useful to know who's there right now? Like, nobody's working on that kind of a time scale, right? I will say, though, one thing. There is this monetization overview. There is a metric here which I've been teaching about in the textbook. I don't really like pound it as strongly as I possibly could, but there's a metric that has been in the textbook since the beginning. That is not a metric that is usually seen in Universal Analytics, that they do have here right on this page, and that is this average purchase revenue per user. That is not average order value, right? Average order value is conditional on a purchase. What's the average amount they spend, right? This average purchase revenue per user is what's our total revenue divided by our total users, right? And why is that a useful metric? And that is when we bring new traffic, a new user onto the site, we don't know if they're going to buy or not, but what is that worth to us on average, not knowing whether they buy or not? Well, for this Google site, it's $1.47, which means if we're spending more than $1.25 to get that user, we're probably not profitable at all, right? If we're spending $1.47, we're also probably not profitable because we're going to pay twice for some of these people when they come on from 2 different channels, right? So that is a really useful metric. So that's like the one good thing that came out of Google Analytics 4, right? And so I will say there is one thing that is positive, and that's why I brought up the other theory about spillovers. So spillovers, one of the aspects of spillovers that's we need to understand is if we say our traffic is actually unprofitable because let's say the conversion rate is really low from this search, well, it might be that some of that traffic comes later. From another channel that may be less expensive, and so maybe it's more profitable than we realize. Well, at least that is one thing that Google Analytics 4 does better than Universal Analytics, is that it's focused on users. So if we have this spillovers where somebody comes to our website, doesn't purchase immediately, but then comes directly to the website another time and then purchases later, Google Analytics 4 is doing a better job of tracking those people over time and focused on the user and the multi-visit experience. But I think the trade-off was a really terrible trade-off. We're going to focus on the user, and we're going to forget about the session by session, the importance of optimizing each individual session. Why would you not want to optimize the first session and get them to purchase on the very first time they come there, right? So Google Analytics 4, by understanding the theory, this one doesn't save you that much time. You're going to have to get into Google Analytics 4, understand the layout, but at least it helps you instruct your students on how bad it is and know the metrics they need to actually look for and suss out here. Notice the conversions, 112,000 conversions. They call anything a conversion. Anytime somebody does anything, that's a conversion in Google Analytics 4. So yeah, we gotta get better on that. So Google, for whatever reason, decided we're just gonna, focus on vanity metrics because, it's data, therefore it's useful, right? Yeah, not so much. Okay, let's talk a little bit about social media. Social media is obviously constantly evolving, tons of stuff happening here. I just want to talk about a couple things here. Number one is TikTok. TikTok isn't as new as it used to be, right? I think even just last year would be like, oh my gosh, there's this new up-and-coming channel that is overtaking social media. Okay, what do we do about TikTok? All right, let's, again, step back a little bit. Let's talk about the theory, right? When we are instructing on social media, what is our purpose? We're trying to get them to understand what are the business use cases. So if you're working for a client, how is that client going to use TikTok? Okay, so first things first. First step when we are doing social media for business use, it is, okay, what are we going to try to do here, right? And so I have it broken down this way in the textbook, and that is, okay, the first three are we going to just create content? If we're going to create content to try to attract customers or get face time with people organically, okay, are we trying to do that to create first-time customers? Are we trying to reach new customers, inform them about our product to get them to purchase from us? Or do we have a big, nice base of consumers and we want to get in front of them to remind them that we're here, increase our customer loyalty, induce additional purchases from people who've already purchased from us? Are we going to create content to support some of our SEO efforts? And if you read the textbook, you know that's never your first purpose. I mean, that might be an ancillary purpose, but that's never what you do social media explicitly for, right? And TikTok especially. TikTok, as far as I know, is not going to be a great source of SEO kind of support there. Then we have advertising, right? A social media platform can be a good advertising platform, and if you've read the text, I pressed on something on the bottom. I guess that's a cool on-off switch. All right, so on advertising, if you've read the textbook, you know, when in doubt, what do you use social media for? Just advertise on it. It's a great advertising channel, gives you great targets, and the learning curve is a lot less steep, right? And then finally, you can also do reputation management. That's broken down into both social listening as well as social monitoring, which would be actual active interaction with customers. All right. So when we're looking at TikTok, okay, we've got these videos that just pop up. We scroll through videos that automatically try to optimize this. By the way, how many active TikTok users do I have? Okay, about a third of you. Okay, so I will tell you my experience on TikTok was, okay, I've got to write a chapter on TikTok. I think 2 years ago I decided to write a chapter on TikTok from feedback from you. Thank you for your feedback, by the way. I'll always love getting feedback. Always want to improve the textbook. So I got lots of feedback. We need to have a chapter on TikTok. I was like, all right, so I get on TikTok to do some research on this. I get on TikTok, and what do I see? The most garbage videos you could possibly imagine. And I was so irritated going oh my gosh, why is this site popular at all? This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I'm looking at these videos and they have 4 million views. And I'm like, 4 million views for some woman just dancing a stupid dance, right? And it wasn't even a cool dance. There are cool dancers on there, but this was a terrible dance that was just so dumb, and it just made me so irritated. And then finally, who's the really famous physicist? Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson comes up, and I'm like, oh, something cool, right? I learned something. So I actually okay, I'm going to follow him. At least and then then stuff started to pop up that was oh, this is actually kind of cool. And now TikTok is my educational channel, right? So TikTok is actually, that's actually the only social media that I use actively now. And so TikTok it takes a while for the algorithm to learn about you, but when it does, it actually gives you some good stuff. All right. So if we're gonna, so we have students and they're gonna say, okay, let's say I go work for a client and they're gonna say, hey, we have got TikTok. What should we do on TikTok? What do you tell them? Well, if they've learned this, we know just advertise first off, right? If you this content, trying to optimize your content for posting, it's insanely difficult, right? There's the number of companies who've managed to actually get high volumes of users on TikTok and followers is Washington Post and BMW. I think that's it. It's really tough, right? But what the problem is, so many businesses are scared of TikTok and how difficult it is that they're not advertising on it, right? Most of the advertisements you see are for actually pretty kind of small businesses, up-and-coming businesses. And so there's a lot of businesses that are not taking advantage of this really great channel for advertising, Whereas if they understood the theory just like of digital marketing and social media, it's just advertise first, because it's a great advertising channel. There's, I think, probably really good CPM rates on TikTok that people aren't using. Plus, it's video. I mean, video ads are the most effective ads we've ever come up with, and yet lots of businesses aren't using it. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about on social media is iOS 14.5. Okay, I don't know how many of you memorize the numeric updates from iOS. I don't, so maybe you don't know what iOS 14.5 is. But this was, in 2021, Apple started making this pop-up come. Anytime you use an app that was tracking data across other apps, it would have this pop-up and go, hey, do you want to let this app track you? And 90% of people said, probably not. So 90% of people said, no, why would I want you to track me? And why was that significant? Because Facebook uses that data. That's how they get all of their really detailed targeting, was especially on the retargeting front, is with sharing all of this data, right? That's how they get all their optimal targeting and their optimal reporting. Okay, so what happened after that this is 2021, so April 2021, it's released, and no big deal. Facebook stock price is still going up. It drops a little bit here, but things seem to be going fine. It didn't really affect them that much until what happened right here? Earnings announcements. Okay, so what was happening? All right, so the, iOS 14.5 comes out. Over the subsequent weeks, 90% of people are saying, no, I don't want Facebook to track me anymore. And then all of the advertisers on Facebook are noticing, hey, my retargeting pool is dropping. It just goes off of a cliff. And all of my retargeting is what is, at least what Facebook is telling me, all of my revenue is coming from. Right? So I'm retargeting all of these people, and I'm getting tons of conversions from this. I'm making lots of money, and now suddenly the retargeting pool is going down. My revenue from retargeting is dropping precipitously, so I'm going to pull back on advertising. I'm not going to advertise on Facebook as much, which didn't affect Facebook's stock price directly until Facebook says, oh, by the way, our revenues dropped like 80%. Not 80%, never mind. No, 20%, right? Something like that. So their revenue drops pretty dramatically. Their stock price basically like gets cut in half from the, not quite in half from the peak, but then it drops even more later, right? And so this was a huge deal, right? But if you have read the attribution through experimentation case, which is like I'm most proud of that, of anything I've done for the textbook, it's that case, and it like makes me so sad that I don't think everybody's using it. But if you've read that case, you know kind of the main takeaway from that case is that retargeting attribution is the most inflated reporting there is. Like, so the amount of conversions you're getting from your retargeting, the reports on retargeting is incredibly inflated. So from the experiment we did, we actually found not only is it inflated, it's actually potentially invented. Like all of the attribution, all of the conversions were actually coming from their prospecting advertising, not from the retargeting. But because of the structural issues on the reporting, it looks like it's always coming from the retargeting, right? And so I could have predicted, unfortunately I didn't actually like put in writing beforehand what happened, but I could have predicted what happened. What do you notice here? Facebook price is going up, and actually I haven't even tracked it since April 13th, but I assume it's continuing to creep up. Here's what happened. Advertisers cut back on advertising on retargeting because the retargeting, it wasn't that retargeting was causing all of these purchases, it was that the retargeting was enabling them to claim credit for all of those purchases, right? So they pull back on advertising because iOS 14.5 does not allow that system of over-reporting to happen. So they pull back on Facebook advertising, and so Facebook's stock price goes down. But then what do all these people recognize? I pulled back on my Facebook advertising. My conversions are actually going down. My revenue is going down because it was the combination of prospecting and retargeting that was actually generating sales. Right, so advertisers pull back on Facebook retargeting, their sales are going down, and now they start going, you know what, actually, let's put some money back in there. Like, it seems like we're not making as much money as we were, so they're putting more money that has to go into prospecting because the retargeting channel just isn't as big anymore because nobody's getting tracked anymore, and now Facebook's stock price is going back up because advertisers are coming back. So it was kind of a slow process, but really it was because they didn't understand that retargeting is overstated. And so when retargeting goes away, everybody's in a panic. Retargeting is going away on Chrome as well, right? And people are really scared about this, but it turns out retargeting is not producing as much sales as people realize. And I'm most proud of that because in industry, it's still not well known. This is not well known, and it's only because of that case and that experiment we were able to do where we were able to demonstrate that. So that's like just kind of a plug for me, like on that case. I just love that case. Okay. All right, let's talk about a little bit about display advertising. Okay, so what's going on with display advertising? Nothing huge, well, other than retargeting might be going away. But there's always something small, right? This is always changing. Every single year I've had to update the textbook. I've had to update my screenshots of how you actually go about. They've organized all of the targeting differently, right? And so let's review the theory, right, of what is ad targeting on display advertising, what matters, right? So let's kind of go back. Here's our mock marketplace, right? So here's all the potential people we could target, right? Well, only some of those are actual potential customers, right? And it's always going to be a minority to a small minority of people are actually potential customers. Even something like Coca-Cola, right? You think everybody drinks Coke. Actually, it's probably less than half of people drink Coke. And so, Coke, if they're advertising to everybody, which they do, a lot of their money's being wasted, but, that's just sort of the nature of the game. So when we're doing ad targeting, our goal is to cover just those people, right? And there's two principles we want to think about, is coverage and exclusion, right? We have all of our potential customers mixed among this marketplace of people, most of whom will never buy from us. So we're trying to make our ad targeting cover all those people. We want to make sure we're sending ads to everybody who might purchase from us, but we want to waste as little money as possible. So that's our exclusion. We're trying to exclude as many of these people as possible. It's impossible to get perfect alignment, right? We're always going to waste some money on people who are never going to buy from us. And so there's this trade-off, coverage versus exclusion, right? So that's the idea of ad targeting. But then where's the other aspect of display advertising is the content itself, right? Do we have a good appeal for our ads? And number one is attention. And attention is on a spectrum, right? Number one, do they even see our ad? If our ad shows up at the bottom of the page and they don't even scroll down there, they might not even see our ad. But even if it's a banner ad that comes up on the screen, maybe they don't give it enough attention to even see the 3-word appeal we have on there, right? So we're talking about attention, and then we got what's our value proposition, how do we induce the action to actually click on that, are we doing a good job on there, and then do we have the good match on the landing page. If they click on our ad and their landing page doesn't align with the ad they just saw, then they're gonna bounce, right? And I mean bounce in like the technical term, not like let's bounce kind of thing. All right. Okay, so applying these principles to display advertising, okay, our students would love to know, if you're advertising this product, this is the best target. We can't teach them that. Like, nobody knows what the best target is. What they need to understand is these principles, right? So when we're looking at, okay, here's the 6 different categories of targeting on Google display ads. Number one is demographics. Okay, which are demographics our best targeting method? No, it's actually like almost any product is going to have people from a wide variety of demographics, right? The best example I can think of is like makeup, where demographics, okay, if you just limit it to females, you've got pretty good exclusion and pretty good coverage, but not perfect, right? There are men who wear makeup, right? And so if we target only females, we're excluding all males, which, it's probably a good trade-off, even though we are excluding some males who do purchase makeup, right? But in general, demographics, we know demographics are not the best way to target people. It's just not reliable. We don't get good coverage and exclusion trade-off that way. Okay, interests and habits. That's usually where the money is, right? It's, can we figure out what are some behaviors that we've tracked, that Google has tracked over time across their browsing behavior to know these are the kinds of people who are more likely to buy our product. Again, we're never going to get perfect on the coverage versus exclusion, but that's usually where a lot of this is. And again, we can't tell our students this is the right kind of way to target. Every digital advertiser has their tricks to figure, actually we found out that like in our industry, in our product category, for whatever reason, people who are really into camping are really into this, this particular kind of mug, and you might not have known that, but they figured that out. But that's not what we're teaching our students, right? It's simply what is the way we can target. And so we need to kind of consider that whether actively researching or planning. So this is like in-market audiences. In-market audiences are fantastic. We actually found out they've done a search for this product. I should target them. Okay, that's fantastic, and that's actually a really great target. What's the trade-off there? Right? So we say, hey, let's say we're an automobile brand, we're trying to advertise our cars, and we find there's an in-market audience. Google will tell us who is actively looking for a car. That's fantastic, right? We're going to advertise to them. What's the trade-off there? What's the downside? It seems like that's all upside. We're just going to advertise to those people. They're going to buy from us. That's fantastic. Okay, yes, potentially. We could be wasting money on people who, like, the in-market audience, Google isn't as good as, like, when do they leave the in-market audience? It's just going to be like, okay, 3 months we'll take them out, but, like, maybe they bought it already. There's one thing. The other thing is size. Right, it's simply, okay, that's going to give us a really great exclusion, right? Because most of those people are actually looking for a car, so we're not going to waste our money on a bunch of people who aren't interested in buying a car right now. But what's our coverage on that? It's really, really small, right? Like, not everybody who's looking for a car who might actually buy a car from us has been tagged as an in-market audience, right? So that's kind of the principle we can kind of teach there. So. And then we have, and then that's just combined audience segments and custom audience segments is simply, hey, we can put different targeting together, right? So that is, we're going to look at that, and that's going to update every year. There's going to be different ways, but we need to kind of map that onto the theory here. So I think that's basically what I had. I think that's all we have time for. And so it's basically my kind of main point is, what are we teaching? We're kind of teaching digital marketing principles, right? The boots on the ground actions, they're going to get on the job and they're going to get in their project. They're going to learn to do some of these things. But the principles we're going to teach them, they don't change as quickly as the boots on the ground stuff, right? And so if we understand those principles, we understand the theory, that's going to save us a lot of time as well. It's going to help us instruct on those changes a lot better. So hopefully that was useful for you. Maybe if that framework doesn't work for you in terms of doing your updates, I hope that was a good review of sort of some of the principles of some of these topics. So thanks a lot.